How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. I am delighted to have you from coast to coast. The phone number, 877-973-7425. The Trump campaign already circulating the Kamala Harris clip from The View. It was made just a couple of hours ago. They have not only just put it into a press release, they've got it all over the internet. It'll be probably in ads by the end of the day. If you are just tuning in, Kamala Harris was on The View this morning and had, well, this to say.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Ouch. You know, also, I got to play this clip for you. I didn't play it earlier from the 60 Minutes interview. I'm not even going to tell you. Just there's no editorializing necessary. Just listen.
Your critics and the columnists say.
Okay.
They say that the reason so many voters don't know you is that you have changed your position on so many things. You were against fracking, now you're for it. You supported looser immigration policies, now you're tightening them up. You were for Medicare for all, now you're not. So many that people don't truly know what you believe or what you stand for, and I know you've heard that.
In the last 4 years, I have been Vice President of the United States. And I have been traveling our country, and I have been listening to folks and seeking what is possible in terms of common ground. I believe in building consensus. We are a diverse people, geographically, regionally, in terms of where we are in our backgrounds. And what the American people do want is that we have leaders who can build consensus, where we can figure out compromise and understand it's not a bad thing, as long as you don't compromise your values, to find common sense solutions. And that has been my approach.
Y'all, that's not an answer. That's a word salad. That is not an answer. That is a word salad. And that is part of Kamala Harris's problem out there right now. And the Trump campaign seizing on this. Now, I want to shift, though, to something else. I got to talk to you about CBS News. Well, we got to first talk about Ta-Nehisi Coates, however you say his name. Ta-Nehisi Coates. So let's back up. Let's rewind. We're rolling the tape way back. Way back. We're going all the way back to the Protestant Reformation. Oh, yes, that's right. We're going more than 500 years back to 1517, 1518. And we are absolutely going to go there. October 31st, 1517, Martin Luther nails the 95 Theses to the door of the church in Wittenberg. Now, here's the thing you got to understand, though. That's how debates were begun, and Martin Luther did not intend to set off the Protestant Reformation or the Protestant Rebellion, if you're Catholic. What he intended to do was to have a debate on issues. One of those issues was indulgences. If you're unfamiliar with this, the Catholic Church in the 1500s raising money to build the St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican as we know it today. And the church was offering indulgences. It became somewhat of a scandal. You could pay money as a way to reduce the amount of punishment one undergoes for sins. Now, I'm just going to read you Wikipedia so y'all can blame Wikipedia, not me here. In the teachings of the Catholic Church, an indulgence is a way to reduce the amount of punishment one has to undergo for forgiven sins. The Catechism of the Catholic Church describes an indulgence as a remission before God of the temporal punishment due to sin, whose guilt has already been forgiven, which the faithful Christian who is duly disposed gains under certain prescribed conditions. The recipient of an indulgence must perform an action to receive it. This is most often the saying of a specific prayer, but may also include a pilgrimage, the visiting of a particular place, or the performance of specific good work. Indulgences were introduced to allow for the remission of the severe penances of the early church and granted at the intercession of Christians awaiting martyrdom, or at least imprisoned for the faith. The Catholic Church teaches that indulgences draw on the treasury of merit accumulated by Jesus' superabundantly meritorious sacrifice on the cross and the virtues and penances of the saints. They are granted for specific good works and prayers in proportion to the devotion with which those good works are performed or prayers recited. By the late Middle Ages, indulgences were used to support charities for the public good, including hospitals. However, the abuse of indulgences, mainly through commercialization, had become a serious problem which the Church recognized but was unable to restrain. Indulgences were, from the beginning of the Protestant Reformation, a target of attack by Martin Luther and other Protestant theologians. Eventually, the Catholic Counter-Reformation curbed the abuses of indulgences. Essentially, by the late Middle Ages, you want to be forgiven for your sins and you're rich, here's some money, go build the Vatican. And honestly, whether even many of my Catholic friends will recognize, though they disagree with where the Protestant Reformation wound up, that the Reformation itself wasn't a terrible thing, as it forced a Catholic Counter-Reformation, which actually did address a lot of Luther's criticisms, one of the biggest of which was the indulgence. Indulgences have morphed over time, and they've left Christianity to other religions, including secular paganism. And in this secular paganism, the indulgences of progressives are, particularly in these days, in light of these quote-unquote original sin of America, race-based. And progressives find philosopher black men and women to whom they give indulgences, and they become allies in the language of the left and are forgiven their complicity in the systemic racism of the United States. And first and foremost among those is Ta-Nehisi Coates, who used to be a pretty thoughtful writer, but then he became the pope of the progressive racialist movement, and you're no longer allowed to criticize him. And white editors literally did stop aggressively editing Coates because it was a sin to edit this man who had a story to tell, and his story was actually kind of bat crap crazy. He wrote of 9/11 and the firefighters and policemen who rushed into the World Trade Center to pull people out before it collapsed. These are his words in his book. They were not human to me, black, white, or whatever. They were menaces of nature. They were the fire, the comet, the storm, which could, with no justification, shatter my body. Coates, in his perverse world view, could not separate a officer who's engaged in police brutality from the firefighters and police officers who rushed into the World Trade Center as heroes to save people. They were instead, quote, menaces of nature. And this is a man who white progressives, and I think he knows it, white progressives throw money at him and attention at him as a form of indulgence to absolve them of their complicity in systemic racism. Well, he faded away. He went off. He did some bad Marvel Black Panther racialist comics that nobody wanted. He's done all this racial stuff. And now he's back. And guess where the man who saw firefighters and police officers rushing into the World Trade Center on 9/11 to save people as menaces of nature, guess where he's landed? That Hamas is good, Israel is bad, Israel's to blame for everything, and the Palestinians are the victims, not the Jews, and they got what they were deserved on October 7th. In fact, he's written this book, and nowhere in the book does he even address Hamas and Hezbollah. It's all the Jews are bad and Israel's to blame. So Tony Ducopel on CBS News interviewed Dinesh Coach. And guess what? He challenged him on his presuppositions that the Jews are to blame for everything, and it has gone over poorly with CBS News. Management has decried his interview. Management at CBS News has blasted Ducopel for daring to ask Coates about his anti-Semitic views and about how Coates doesn't see a complicated situation. He says it's very simple: Jews bad, Palestinians good. And Ducopel asked him tough questions about it. Employees at CBS News are melting down, and so CBS News today is bringing in Dr. Donald Grant, a DEI strategist and trauma advisor, to moderate a discussion with employees who are upset that their God-man Coates was dared challenged on his anti-Semitism. You should know that Dr. Grant on his Instagram page has a picture of what he calls Uncle Tim's cabin, and it is Uncle Tom's cabin, and he has photoshopped in Tim Scott's face on all the pictures except one woman, and he put Candace Owens on it. Uncle Tim's cabin, advertised his new book alert. This is the racist putting Tim Scott on the cover of Uncle Tom's cabin. That guy's going to come in and mediate the conversation. To her credit, Jan Crawford, one of the best reporters at CBS News, is having none of it. So they had a phone call yesterday with CBS's management, Wendy McMahon, the head of CBS News, and Adrian Rourke, who's in charge of news gathering. And they quoted CBS News' handbook and said, we will still ask tough questions, we will still hold people accountable, but we will do so objectively, which means checking our biases and opinions at the door. We're here to report news without fear or favor. There are times we fail our audience and each other. We're in one of those times right now, and it's been growing, and we're at a tipping point. Many of you have reached out to express your concerns about recent reporting, specifically the CBS News Coates interview last week, as well as comments made coming out of some of our correspondents reporting. And what is this reporting? It's reporting that is objectively showing Hamas and Hezbollah are terrorist groups. And they're saying that this is bad reporting. They're saying that Ducopel, who is Jewish, dared to allow his Jewishness to impugn the legacy of neutrality and objectivity in asking a man probing questions about his views that Israel's bad, Palestine is good, and never even mentions Hezbollah and Hamas. Jan Crawford, the CBS reporter, chief legal correspondent, was on the call. Let me quote what she said. This is Jan Crawford's words. It sounds like we're calling out one of our anchors in a somewhat public setting on this call for failing to meet editorial standards for, I'm not even sure what. I thought our commitment was to the truth. And when someone comes on our air with a one-sided account of a very complex situation, as Coates himself acknowledged that he has, it's my understanding that as journalists, we are obligated to challenge that worldview so that our viewers can have the access to the truth of a fuller account, a more balanced account. And to me, that's what Tony did. Tony prevented a one-sided account from being broadcast on our network that was completely devoid of history or facts. As someone who does a lot of interviews, I'm not sure now how to proceed in challenging viewpoints that are obviously one-sided and devoid of fact and history. What was the response? They refused to respond to her statement and question. This is wild. Again, Coates doesn't mention the word Hamas or Fatah or Palestinian Islamic Jihad or Hezbollah or Iran once. In his telling, these threats don't exist. The only barriers that exist to peace in the Middle East are ones Israel erects. And he was challenged on that. And CBS News is now melting down. Republicans can be forgiven for treating CBS News as an enemy publication at this point. The fact that they're melting down because an anti-Semite was asked tough questions on their air tells you everything you need to know about the management of this network. The fact that they brought in a man who put Tim Scott's face on Uncle Tom's Cabin fills in the rest of the story.
Blinds.com Cyber Monday Last Chance is happening now. Don't miss out on up to 45% off site-wide. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Save up to 45% site-wide, plus a free professional measure right now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry. Everybody's talking about it. Billions of dollars invested, so buckle up. The problem is AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, Databricks, Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Oracle.com/Erickson. Go check them out today. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. This did not make it into the show notes today because I only just saw it, but we're going to have to, in fact, I'm going to send this to Philip and tell him to put it in the show notes for tomorrow because it's just that good. My Saints were killed by Kansas City last night, which is fine because I actually like Kansas City. I'm not a hanger-on. I've really always liked Andy Reid more than the Kansas City. But they won last night. Kansas City just clobbered the Saints, 26-13. What made it so remarkable is that the guys who put the points on the board were all rejects from other teams, which typically doesn't happen. So you had, for example, Juju Smith-Schuster. Then you had Kareem Hunt, Samaje Perine. You got Mecole Hardman, Jody Fortson. And these guys, they all came from other teams that had cut them. Kansas City was in a bind with some injuries. They put these guys on the team. A couple of them had been around before, but most of them had not. And yet Andy Reid was able to piece them together on the field in a way that made magic in ways other coaches couldn't. And it really was a remarkable game last night. I might have sat in the hot tub too long watching the game, but it was fantastic to sit out there and watch these guys. It was a heck of a game. I'm glad football season. I am not an expert by any means. I can't name the plays, and I don't do fantasy football, but I sure enjoy watching it. Particularly now that they finally realized taking knees and doing political protests was death to the game. And now it's just back to football. All right, 877-973-7425 is the number. Take your calls when we come back. First, I need to tell you about Vision Computers because they want to build a computer for you. If you go to visioncomputers.com or call them at 404-COMPUTE, they can build you your computer. If you go to the electronics store and you buy one of the off-the-shelf models, they've built a computer that's going to be adequate for everybody, and you're not everybody. You're you. You want a computer for you. You can get exactly what you want from Vision Computers. They're going to save you money, and then you get their world-class tech support for free. So anytime you don't know how to do something, you get a special phone number, and you call them. 15 seconds or less, you get the answer. If you have a problem, they can remote in. They can handle email. They can handle printer support. You name it. Vision Computers can take care of it. Now, let's say you want Vision Computers world-class support, thousands of 5-star reviews, but you've already got a computer, you're not really in the market for one. Well, for $179 a year, they can also be your tech support. So if you're an independent contractor, you work out of the house, you need an IT department, can't afford one, $179 a year. That's Vision Computers. They'll be there for you. 15 seconds or less. You call them, they answer the phone. They don't put you on hold. 404-COMPUTE. Give them a call. 404-COMPUTE. Tell them Eric sent you. You're going to save even more money. Anybody nationwide can take advantage of this. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Greetings, conversationalists. It's Eric Erickson here. Delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I'm going to take a couple phone calls here, starting with Tom. Welcome to the show, Tom. How are you?
Hey, Eric. Good afternoon.
Thanks for calling.
Hey, I just wanted two things, actually. But the first thing primarily was hitting me on my head last night when I was driving around and up in Pennsylvania. Just put it in context. I'm up in Pennsylvania, southeastern Pennsylvania, around Philadelphia. And I was just encouraged by the number of signs, like a 5-to-1 ratio of Trump signs versus
Wow.
Harris. And I didn't expect that whatsoever.
Now, what part of Pennsylvania are you in?
Okay, so good question. I'm in Delaware County,
Oh, yeah.
which is, you know that area. So it touches up against Montgomery County, which is, has a great deal of socioeconomic variety.
Uh-huh.
Some very, very high end and some, middle. Where I'm at in Delaware County is, basically middle America, blue collar.
Now, let me pause here and say, for those of you who are listening and you're wondering, Delaware County is the south end of Philly. It's north of Wilmington. So you got Springfield, Swarthmore. It's basically, if you ever landed in Philadelphia, it's just to the west of Philadelphia Airport, south side of Philly.
Right, exactly. And very blue collar. It has been historically. So, but I had, my daughter lives up by Villanova, so I had an opportunity to drive up there, and I was just amazed. I was like, really? And my son, who also listens to your show, he was like, yeah, Dad, it's like people are really fed up around here.
Mm-hmm. And, the data overwhelmingly outside of the core part of Philadelphia there is looking worse and worse for Harris. You've got this they do call it the Latino belt there, of these small cities and towns that are disproportionately Latino, and they are disproportionately moving to Donald Trump. Young black men in Philadelphia moving to Donald Trump. I mean, there are signs on the ground that Philadelphia and Pennsylvania itself is slipping away from Kamala Harris. And here's how I know it, Tom, that Pennsylvania is slipping away from Harris. She's having to pull money out of Georgia and Arizona and redeploy that money to Pennsylvania in the ad war. And that tells me they're giving up on Georgia and Arizona to try to save Pennsylvania. All you got to do is follow the money. Trump is not having to pull money out of Pennsylvania. Harris is having to pull money out of Georgia and Arizona and send it to Pennsylvania. That's a warning sign.
And to your point, and watching TV, she is just lambasting the airwaves with her, and that was my second question, with her ads. And I haven't seen any Trump ads, which plays right into what you're saying. But the ad that runs the most is the Trump, quote unquote, Trump tax, national tax. Can you talk to that subject just a little bit? Because I don't remember hearing him say anything of that nature.
Okay, so here's what it is. So what Donald Trump is, and honestly, it is a cockamamie scheme, and I have wished he would drop it, but J.D. Vance loves this idea, and he's got Trump sold on it. Trump's idea is an across-the-board 10% tariff on every imported product, not just from enemies like China, but from every country, a 10% tariff. A 10% tariff is going to be a 10% inflation, really 7%, because there's usually a 3% offset. So it's going to raise prices by about 7% on everything if he does it.
Okay. All right. That you've spoken about that before, but she's rephrased it to make it a tax.
Yeah.
And seeming like it's a national sales tax. Matter of fact, that's what she says.
Yeah.
It's a national sales tax.
And
in
that's
essence, it kind of is that.
It kind of is that because the way Trump talks about it, he seems like he really believes that the exporting country is going to pay this tax. That's not actually how it works. The importing business raises its price and you pay the tax, and that's why she's attacking it that way.
Yeah, the man in the street, that's probably a conclusion he's drawing. But anyone with any sense would understand how you describe it or how we understand it, which is...
And also, he's a Republican. People don't tie Republicans to raising taxes, so they tend to be dismissive of the attack.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I kept seeing that, and that's their focus is like it's a national sales tax. I mean, I have not heard him say those words out of his mouth. Now, I have heard him say tariff.
Right.
And in essence, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Look, I appreciate the phone call. Enjoy Pennsylvania. Weather's great this time of year. Leaves are changing. Speaking of tariffs and taxes, Samantha calling from Madison, Wisconsin. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Eric.
Hi there.
Hi. I've been listening to you for almost 3 years now. I know you're not in this area or in Wisconsin, but I tune into the podcast every day.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, I had a question about taxes as well, because one of the things I know back in 2017, I believe it was, when the new taxes were passed underneath Trump, and now after 2020 election, I remember having a discussion with my mother-in-law, and she was like, well, everything's starting to get more expensive because the new administration's having to go in and clean up what the last administration didn't do and what they did, blah, 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 blah. And then I hear nothing for 3 years about anything. And now that it's election season, all I'm hearing about is how Donald Trump's tax plan, this is the result of it. This is why things are getting so bad, his spending, all of that. And it was one thing when I was seeing it on Facebook because I don't consider that real life. It's just not real. People don't live there. But then I start hearing it in the salon when I'm working on clients, and I'm like, no, I don't think that's accurate. Like, yes, we are still under his tax plan, but that's not entirely the reason why things are so high.
Right. So
and their tax plan is a lot worse.
Yeah. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, particularly spread by Harris. So first of all, Trump's tax cuts had nothing to do with the current inflation in the country. That's
what I thought.
Yeah. So the reason that we have them, and it's Larry Summers, who is Barack Obama and Bill Clinton's economic advisor and Treasury Secretary, pointed out that when you dump a bunch of government money into the economy, you provoke inflation. And that's that he was warning Joe Biden with his COVID plan. Your COVID plan, your bailout for COVID is way too much. You're putting too much money into the economy. It's going to provoke inflation. Biden disagreed, did it, and we got inflation. What the Democrats are trying to say is actually it was because of Donald Trump's tax cuts that all this money got out there. And they're really not being true. And even like CNN and CNBC are saying that's not true. It wasn't the Trump tax cuts. It was the inflationary effect of dumping so much money into government subsidies and bailouts with Biden's COVID plan. Now, to be clear, Donald Trump put too much money into the economy with his COVID bailout. Had they done nothing else, everything would have worked itself out. But Biden then went in and put even more money into the economy and just exploded inflation.
That's what I thought, and that was my understanding, especially after listening to you for so long. I was like, well, that's why is this now suddenly a thing that I'm hearing resurface? And it's sad when I'm seeing my friends online saying this and then hearing it in the salon, and it's like, wait a minute, your side of the fence is doing just as much spending as what the previous administration did. It's not all just one person.
Right.
Like, this is accumulation of how many years of spending more than what we bring in.
And it's been so much. And you're right. It's both sides have done it. But I mean, you had liberal economists telling Joe Biden, don't do this COVID package or you're going to get inflation. The problem, Samantha, just not to get too in the weeds with it, but there's this economic theory that's taken hold on the left called modern monetary theory. And essentially what it claims is that we can dump a bunch of money into the economy. The government can print money. And at the first sign of inflation, we jack up taxes on wealthy people, and that'll pull money out of the economy and stop inflation. So what they're trying to do is turn this on its head, chicken and egg, and say, actually, because Donald Trump cut taxes when we dumped this money into the economy, it provoked inflation, so it's his fault. When really, this modern monetary theory, no major economist anywhere in the country accepts it. It's just essentially the argument I've heard it explained to me is that people who believe in modern monetary theory believe we're walking down a hallway with no lights, and there's a hole in the floor called inflation. And what people with who believe in modern monetary theory believe is that you can walk almost the whole length of the hallway and you'll be able to feel the inflation start before you fall into the hole. And most economists say you never feel the effects of inflation until it's on top of you. You've fallen into the hole before you realize inflation has started. And guess what? Turns out the regular economists were right that we fell into the hole before we realized we had inflation, and it discredited modern monetary theory. But there are still people on the left, they can't admit they were wrong. So that's kind of what we're dealing with.
Well, thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for calling, and thanks for listening up in Madison. Hopefully I'll be on the air up there soon, so you won't just have to listen on the podcast. Now, boy, we got a lot of stuff covered in those couple of minutes here, and I haven't even got to the story that I wanted to talk about, which is fine. So Corey DeAngelis has a piece in the New York Post, and he largely agrees with me, so I want to talk about this real quick. This is on school choice. Former President Donald Trump promoted school choice at his campaign stop in deep blue Milwaukee last week. It was a smart move. Milwaukee is home to the longest-standing modern-day private school choice initiative in the country. About 30,000 students benefit from the program, which allows their taxpayer-funded education dollars to follow them to the public or private school of their family's choosing. The initiative has been a success based on demand, and research shows improvements in test scores, college enrollment, and even crime reduction. Tens of thousands of families across the rest of the state also benefit from various private school choice options. The latest Morning Consult polling finds nearly three-quarters of Wisconsin school parents support private school choice in the form of education savings accounts. The support for education freedom crosses party lines. Now, I'll stop there from Corey. Here's the point, and this is the most notable point of it all. There's a growing body of evidence that when states embrace aggressive school choice, those states' voters begin to vote more Republican. And in fact, when you look at Wisconsin, a upper Midwest Great Lakes state that was trending pretty significantly towards the left, when they enacted school choice during Tommy Thompson's administration, the state hit the brakes on moving to the left and started drifting to the right again. Same in Florida. Florida has the second most aggressive school choice in the country after Wisconsin, and Florida has dramatically shifted to the right. And now Georgia is starting to embrace school choice. Texas looks like they're going to even outperform Georgia on school choice. Arizona has embraced school choice, even though Katie Hobbs, the governor there, is trying to kill it. There's a growing body of evidence, Republican legislators who are listening, that if your state employs school choice, the voters of that state like it so much they start voting Republican because Democrats are so in the bed of the teachers union, they can't help but try to destroy school choice. You want to make your state more Republican? Expand school choice in your state. The data at this point strongly suggests Wisconsin, which is a very swingy state, would be out of play as a blue state had school choice not been enacted. Every time Democrats in Wisconsin try to rein in their school choice program, the voters in that state wind up sending Republican legislators back into the state legislature and putting governors in who are Republican. It's a pretty significant data point now. As a growing body of evidence, you want your state to really lock in as a Republican state? Well, support school choice. Now, we've also got all the economic worries out there. We got 22-year high interest rates starting to come down, but still high. As a gold investor, you probably understand that gold is more of a hedge against a weak dollar than it is inflation. Swiss America has been the trusted leader in precious metals for 40 years. They've been warning people about a secret war on cash for some time. And if you are interested in safeguarding your hard-earned cash, you might want to hear about this secret war on cash the government's running. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. Swiss American can educate you on protecting your assets. Their report is completely free. Completely free. All you do is you call or text my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency. It's growing daily. So get the report, The Secret War on Cash, for free. Just mention Eric when you call or text 800-289-2646. The report is free, takes less than 15 minutes to read. 800-289-2646. Text my name, E-R-I-C-K. You'll get a link back, fill out the form, get the report, read it. 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425 should you wish to be on the program. Those of you listening, WHIO in Dayton, Ohio, I need to have a chat with you. This is important. I didn't think it would come to this, but I'm excited that it has. Bernie Moreno is beginning to surge against Sherrod Brown. So much so that Chuck Schumer has had to deploy $10 million in ad money to Ohio, money that is being pulled from Nevada and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Montana. They've largely given up now on John Tester in Montana. I mentioned this yesterday. They got like $2 million left in ad spends, but they've surged in Ohio. Now, why? Again, at this point in the race, you have to understand that the campaigns are doing in-depth polling. You see the horse race polling, and the horse race polling is never as good as the internal campaign polling that costs tens of thousands of dollars to do, if not $100,000, and isn't really who's ahead right now. It's what are the trend lines? What are the issues? And you can tell that the issues are about the economy and immigration, because that seems to be Chuck Schumer's message, that somehow Sherrod Brown is going to be able to fix these things, not Bernie Moreno. So Moreno in Ohio is suddenly surging in ways I honestly didn't think he was going to be able to pull it off. And now I'm becoming a little cautiously optimistic. In the same way, Wisconsin is now tied. Eric Hovde, I wanted to get him at the gathering so bad, and it was the Wisconsin State Fair that weekend, so I couldn't get him. But he's a great guy. I've had him on the show. He's a wonderful human being. His family runs Hovde houses around the world to bring in human trafficking victims, teach them job skills, protect them from the human traffickers. He's just got a great heart, and he is tied right now with Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin. And here's the thing. If Moreno is starting to surge in Ohio, that means Trump is doing well in Ohio. Where is Ohio close to? Pennsylvania. And in western Pennsylvania, from Erie in the north to Pittsburgh in the south, it appears the Trump campaign is starting to turn out the early vote there. Republican registrations are surging, which is a good sign for Trump. In Wisconsin, you've got Hovde beginning to take the lead there. If Hovde is taking the lead in Wisconsin, that's a good sign for Donald Trump. And where is Wisconsin close to? Michigan. The Upper Peninsula is on the upper end of Wisconsin. Now, the bulk of the population is going to be in the rest of Michigan, across Lake Michigan from Wisconsin. But there are signs that Donald Trump is picking up steam there as well. Republicans are looking at that Senate race now. The trends right now appear to be in the Republicans' favor. Even as they may lose the House of Representatives, there's an upward momentum towards the GOP right now, and screaming about the death of democracy is not saving the Democrats one little bit.